The Unbreakable Trust, Outsmarting a Calculated Divorce.
I suspected my spouse was planning a divorce, so I moved my assets. 2 weeks later, she filed, then backtracked when her plan backfired. Hello, people. I've been skimming through the posts here for a while, believing I'd never have my own tale to tell. However, life has a way of shocking you, and I've been lugging this about for months. I need to let it out. Let me be clear. I've never been the sort to jump to conclusions or assume the worst. My wife, let's call her Kathrein Cole, KC, and I have been together for 8 years and married for 5. Things were solid, or so I thought. We experienced the typical ups and downs, but nothing that made me think, oh, there's a problem here. I am Arthur Vane, AV, a 50-year-old geological consultant of Irish and Korean heritage, living in Singapore. Kathrein Cole, KC, is a 48-year-old architect of Filipino and Scottish descent. It felt effortless, as if we had figured out the whole love thing. That is why what occurred next struck me like a ton of bricks. The shift. Around 7 months ago, things began to alter. At first, it was minor details, things you'd likely miss if you weren't paying attention. She began carrying her tablet everywhere, even when she was only going to the kitchen or folding clothes. Before this, her tablet would sit on the coffee table for hours, and she didn't mind who picked it up. One day, I made this joke. "What, are you designing a secret embassy now?" She chuckled and added, "No, a client has been sending very large, secure files." A few days later, she created a fingerprint lock. That one caught me off surprise because she had never used it before. When I casually inquired why, she responded something vague about protecting her sensitive design blueprints. And it did not end there. She began taking calls outside the room, which she had never done before. If I inquired who it was, she would just say, "Just a contact for a large-scale commercial tender." Then I noticed a new habit, keeping her screen facing down on the table. It was one of those blink-and-you-miss-it moments, yet it stayed with me. Growing distance. However, it wasn't all about the tablet. She started to feel distant. Conversations that used to flow easily now felt like pulling teeth. If I brought up future plans, such as, "Should we put a deposit on that retreat villa in Bali?" Or, "Do you think we should convert some shares to buy an antique clock?" she'd simply nod and say, "Yeah, we'll see," before shifting the subject. It all came together for me on a random Wednesday. She informed me that she was meeting a new contractor for coffee after work. I happened to be running errands in the same area, so I figured, why not surprise her? When I arrived, however, she was not with anyone. She stood outside the cafe, walking back and forth, her phone placed against her ear. I remained in my vehicle because something about the way she spoke seemed serious. I overheard phrases like, "The documentation is almost ready," and "securing the full payout soon." My stomach sank. When she returned home, I asked her how her coffee meeting went. She told me a complete narrative about the contractor's difficulty with a city zoning permit. It was such an unexpected comment that I just gazed at her for a second. "What about that comprehensive list you wanted?" I inquired, referencing a previous odd suggestion she had made. She shrugged. "I just think we should have everything in one place, like all our asset deed numbers, investment portfolio keys, vault documents, that kind of thing, just in case of emergency."
"What kind of emergencies?" I inquired, attempting to keep my tone casual. She shrugged again. "Financial independence is just smart, isn't it? What if something happens to one of us? Or what if we need to liquidate a big holding quickly?" Her argument made sense on the surface, but something about the way she expressed it made me nervous. It was too rehearsed and polished. Why now? Why are we suddenly concerned about arranging our finances when, as a high-net-worth couple, we've always kept them separate and loose? Was this just typical high-net-worth adult behavior, and was I reading too much into it? But then I remembered the phone calls, the talk I overheard in the cafe, and how distant she'd been recently. Until then, I had done nothing about it. A few days later, she mentioned it again. "Have you thought more about organizing the asset registry? Like, do you know where all the holding company details are?" I lowered the knife and turned to face her. "Okay, what's going on?" I inquired, attempting to keep my tone light but firm. "You've been bringing up the liquid assets a lot lately. Is there something we need to talk about?" She finally looked up from her tablet, astonished that I had pressed her on it. "No, nothing's wrong," she responded hastily. "I just think it's important, that's all. For tax purposes." Her response seemed ambiguous, too vague. I nodded and let it go, but the way she avoided providing a direct answer made me even more suspicious. It felt like she was concealing something, but I had no idea what it was. So the next day, while she was at work, I decided to look into our finances. I opened our joint account online and discovered something unexpected. Over the last month, a few tiny moves had taken place. Nothing large, but small quantities that did not appear to have a clear purpose. They were not designated for bills, groceries, or anything similar. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but it appeared that she had been withdrawing money from the account for some reason which I couldn't figure out.
It was eating at me, so I contacted someone I trusted, an old college friend who also happens to be a financial litigation specialist. "Look," he remarked after I'd explained everything, "I'm not saying something is absolutely going on, but you're not insane for wanting to be ready. If you're concerned about protecting your high-value assets, now is the moment to do so. Better safe than sorry." He walked me through what I could do, simple procedures to ensure my individual assets were protected if something happened. I'll admit that taking such drastic action felt out of the ordinary, but the more I considered it, the more it made sense. If she was really up to something, and I was beginning to suspect she was, I needed to defend myself. This wasn't just about money or assets, it was about the life we had created together. That evening, while she was out, I sat at my desk and took out my laptop. Each paper I studied felt like a betrayal, but a persistent voice in my head reminded me that this was about survival, not sabotage. I compiled a list of everything I could transfer and how to do it without raising suspicion. I had entirely trusted her for years, and now here I was, playing defense. Then I called my sister and explained why I needed her help, but not in detail. "I need you to hold on to some investment portfolios for me for a while. It's nothing bad, just something I need to do to protect myself, just in case." "Are you okay?" Her voice was filled with anxiety. "Yeah, I lied. It's just a corporate precaution. Nothing to worry about. By the time Kathrein Cole, KC, arrived home, I had already begun the process. I moved the majority of my liquid assets, our commodities investments, and even the title to my yacht to my sister's name. I kept enough in our joint account to keep up appearances, but the rest was locked down. She didn't notice anything. Over the next 14 days, I tried to maintain a normal routine. She appeared satisfied, even unusually cheery at times. What stood out, however, was that she never brought up the finances again, not even after I questioned her the last time. It was as if the subject had evaporated from her memory. The silence only made me feel more anxious. It wasn't like her to drop anything she considered essential, and the way she avoided it suddenly appeared deliberate. I made certain that everything was solid. I glanced over the paperwork again, double-checking every aspect of my sister's asset transfers. The yacht, the savings, the investments, everything was now legally in her name, sealed in an uncontested corporate holding. 2 weeks had passed, and everything appeared normal. Too normal, frankly. Then, one random Friday night, she sat me down on the couch, turned off the television, and said, "We need to talk." I knew what she was going to say before she did. "I think we should get a separation, leading to a divorce," she replied, her voice so calm it seemed prepared. Then she said something that struck a different tone. "You know, I've had to compromise a lot for you over the years, and I don't think you really appreciate them. I deserve more financial security for my future." "A friend of mine has been helping me see things more clearly," she continued, not looking at me. "A colleague. That's why her 'I deserve more' line hurt so much. I didn't even consider buying it. She was not upset due to anything I did or did not do. She was upset because something had changed in her." Instead, I nodded and said something innocuous, such as, "If that's how you feel, I guess we should figure out the division of joint property." After that chat, she went into her own apartment, and I received the divorce papers on Monday. Let me tell you, they didn't only want to stop the relationship, they were planning to take everything. Half the Singapore residence, my private savings, my high-risk assets, and the classic car. I began with her professional network platform. I searched through her tagged photographs and comments looking for someone new. That's when I discovered the pattern. Dexter Shaw repeatedly liked and commented on her posts. I clicked on his profile, which was public. At first glance, he didn't appear to be much more than a 38-year-old corporate strategist. But as I scrolled down, I spotted something unusual. He posted a photo at the same cafe I'd seen her at weeks before, on the same day I overheard her discussing starting fresh. My gut churned. More subtle signals were a comment on one of her pictures that read, "You've got this, architect," as well as a selfie he'd taken from what appeared to be her new bachelor apartment. I decided to contact one of our mutual acquaintances, Zara. She and my wife had been friends for years, so she knew what was going on. Zara swiftly said she had no idea about the colleague or any suggestions. Not willing to give up, I called another friend, Sophia. When I pressed her more, she quickly ended the call, leaving me even more skeptical than before. Then, to my astonishment, Sophia called back. After a long pause, she revealed what she knew. Apparently, my wife had been spending a lot of time with someone named Dexter Shaw, whom she had met at work. Emily claimed she didn't know much else, but from what she'd heard, Dexter Shaw was very active in the asset division advice my wife was receiving. I choose to confront it in my own manner. That Saturday, I headed to her apartment building and parked a block away. A few hours later, she and Dexter Shaw stepped out of the building. They did not hold hands or anything, but the way they walked together, close, leaning in to talk, was plenty. They got into his electric SUV and drove away. Now everything made sense. The unexpected distancing, the money questions, the forceful demands, and the divorce papers. She wasn't simply abandoning me. She was leaving me with nothing, and she was accompanied by someone at all times. The first mediation session felt strained. Her lawyer arrived with a binder so thick that it appeared they were bringing a case against a multinational corporation. He began listing her demands. When it was finally our turn, my lawyer handed a stack of paperwork across the table and said, "Before we proceed, I think it's important for everyone to review these." Her lawyer took the papers and skimmed through them. His confident posture changed fast. "What is this?" he inquired, gazing at my lawyer. "These documents show the transfer of all major assets into a corporate holding under my client's sister's name," my lawyer said calmly. "The transfers were completed several weeks before the divorce filing, and the holding is fully legal and irrevocable." The room became utterly silent. Her lawyer looked at her, confused and frustrated. "You didn't mention this," he stated flatly. She snatched the papers from his hands and flipped through them, her face flushing. "This can't be real," she said, staring at the notarized signatures and dates. She turned to me, her countenance changing from incredulity to rage. "You planned this," she muttered, gazing at me as if I'd committed a heinous crime. "You knew I was going to file, and you set this up to screw me over." I did not respond. I just sat there and let her connect the dots on her own. The dates aligned exactly, indicating that I had transferred everything well before she filed. The conference finished with her lawyer saying something about needing to rethink their strategy.
When we walked out of the building, she took me aside in the hallway. "This isn't over," she added, her tone low. "You're going to regret this." I just looked at her and said, "I already regret trusting you. That's the only regret I have." Things escalated faster than I had anticipated. Following the mediation session, she went into complete meltdown mode almost instantly. It began with the calls, endless calls. When the calls and texts did not work, she began telling stories. Mutual friends informed me that she had been telling people that the divorce was a hoax and that it was all part of a larger farce, a negotiation tactic. The flaws in her story quickly became apparent. When others didn't instantly accept the negotiation justification, she doubled down. She said it was not a joke, but rather a test of our financial stability. Due to a common buddy, let us call him Leo, the truth would eventually come out. Leo and I were not particularly close, but we had always been nice. A few weeks after the mediation, he messaged me unexpectedly, stating he had something I needed to see. When we met, he brought out his phone and showed me a series of text messages between her and Dexter Shaw. Apparently, this common acquaintance had grown concerned about the way things were going, especially when Dexter Shaw began gloating about how he was assisting her in securing her future. "This guy's been playing both sides," Leo replied, shaking his head. "He's been hyping her up to take you for everything, while making her believe he'd be there for her afterward." Leo gave me the texts and said, "I thought you should know. You don't deserve this man." The texts were terrible. She wasn't just venting to Dexter Shaw about the divorce. She was actively planning her future steps with him, and he was guiding her through them. A message she left read, "Once the asset settlement's done, we'll have everything we need. I just need him to agree to the terms." Dexter Shaw responded, "Don't back down. Make him feel guilty if you have to. He owes you. We'll start fresh once you've got the funds." I sat there, staring at Leo's phone and trying to understand what I was reading. This was a cold, deliberate manipulation. I thanked Leo, and he left, but my thoughts were racing. Everything made sense now. Her abrupt isolation, her fixation with our liquid assets, and her harsh demands throughout the asset division. It was all part of a plan, one she had been developing with Dexter Shaw behind the scenes. The texts soon circulated among our mutual friends. Leo shared them with a few friends and they quickly spread. Her story suddenly ceased to be credible. People who had previously been indifferent or even supportive of her began to distance themselves, and the change was nearly immediate. Even her closest allies started to distance themselves. By the time the asset division was finalized, she had only her personal belongings and her initial investment portfolio. Her lawyer quietly dismissed her complaint after recognizing there was no legal basis to stand on. All of those bold requests had crumbled under the weight of the corporate holding documents I had produced. The trust I had established with my sister was unbreakable. Dexter Shaw seemed to vanish as soon as things began to unravel. I wouldn't be surprised if he used her as much as she did me. From what I could tell, he'd been feeding her fantasies of wealth, independence, and a new beginning. But the moment it became evident she wasn't going away with anything, he was gone. Without Dexter Shaw in her corner, her confidence plummeted. The calls and texts continued, but they became increasingly desperate. She was not accusing me anymore. She begged. "Can we just talk, please? I'll do anything to fix this," one voicemail said. A different opinion. "I don't have to forgive me, but can't we just settle this and move on? I'll drop everything if you just talk to me." I did not respond. I could not. It was too late to reverse the harm. Even her family began to drift away. Her brother contacted me at one time, apologizing for some of the things he had said before when he believed her side of the story. He said he didn't know what she was doing to you. He was sorry he ever took her word for it. As for me, I received the Singapore residence, my private savings, and something I hadn't experienced in a long time: peace of mind. My sister, as usual, was my rock. She arrived with blueprints for redecorating and a list of suggestions to help me reclaim the area as mine now. Life feels like it's mine again. No more second-guessing every small interaction. No longer feeling betrayed. Just peace. She is a chapter from my history that I no longer read, and the rest of the story is entirely up to me to write.
The strategy paid off, and the chapter with Kathrein Cole is finally closed. If you enjoyed hearing how I secured my peace, please like this video and subscribe. Hit the notification bell to catch more real-life stories. Thank you for watching.